almost anyone that I've had issues with, I could talk it out with them.
Nice. Good.
Now, you had a lot of, most of the best interviews, right? And the most in-depth interviews. You've interviewed everyone. If you were to say like your MVP list, what's your favorite person? Who's your favorite person to interview?
My personal favorite,
Yeah.
like the person that I really enjoyed the interview with. That's a good question.
It's quite the roster.
Yeah. I think the Smokey Robinson interview was special.
Okay.
Like this was
Ooh.
probably the most musically accomplished human being
Yeah, that's a
that I've
personal.
ever sat down with. You know, like going back to like the 50s, and the Motown impact.
Just got
and,
goosebumps.
yeah, like I'm sitting down with Smokey Robinson, which, you know, doing a life story piece on him that he's never done.
I see.
And this is something that's like special.
It's nerve-wracking.
You know, like, yeah, he might get a documentary at some point, but hearing the first person perspective from beginning, you know, from birth to where they are now is special.
Yeah.
And Smokey is special.
Absolutely.
Being a student too, it's like, man.
Yeah.
Like you probably couldn't tell people how much that meant to you. You
Yeah,
can't, like,
I
you know.
mean, from the voice to the songwriting to the involvement in Motown. He was the vice president or president of Motown for a while.
Eventually.
To the relationship with Marvin Gaye, to Diana Ross, to all this. It was like, yo, like this is
Heavy.
This is heavy. That's probably definitely one of them.
One.
Yeah.
Do you have like a 2, 3? I'm not gonna make you go to 5.
No. It's okay. I mean, obviously the Keefe D interview was important.
Yeah.
That was important because it was like,
Just
not
wild.
only did we have the book, but we had all the different perspectives from that night. We had Idi Amin from the Outlaws in the car behind Tupac. We had the first responder, Chris Carroll, who showed up. We had, you know, Mob James, who was the street security that night, that gave his perspective. We have Greg Kading, who was the one that got Keefe to confess, and his investigation of it. It's like putting these puzzle pieces together with someone that's really speaking about this for the first time and solving at the time, which was the biggest, you know, look, the greatest rapper of all time with an unsolved murder, you know, like dispelling all the rumors, you know, actually telling you what happened and why it happened from the very beginning of the situation to the situation itself to what happened afterwards was important. Yeah. That was an important one.
Yeah, this is forever.
Yeah, it's forever.
Like
Yeah.
this is
wild
going
thought.
into a movie.
Yeah.
This is a big deal, and I don't know how many people really understand it in that way. But this
A lot of it is a big deal. That's like every time I sit down with somebody, it's a big deal. This is immortalized for future generations. This is beyond my lifetime. And I and I understand that. And I treat it as so. It's not, we don't just sit down and wing it. Like there's a, you know, people think it's easy, but go sit down with a total stranger for 2 hours and create a story in real time that is an engaging story that really, you know, will live on for, you know, forever, and see how easy that is to do. Yeah, it's
because the gift of gab is that it's a gift, right? But that'll only take you so far.
Yeah, no, the conversation is the conversation. I mean, there's lots of great conversationalists, but you're creating a story. It's very surgical. It's very planned out. It's there's a blueprint. There's a story arc. there's a beginning, there's an end, there's a
Key character.
there's twists and turns, and you have to know the story. You know, the person will take you off into their own tangents. A lot of people complain, oh, you interrupt your guest. That's because I'm trying to tell a story, and if I let them talk, they're going to start going into their clothes collection, and you know,
I'm on Vlad TV.
yeah, and what they think about the president. And it's like, no, that's cool, but let's get back to what I'm trying to do here in this short period of time. So it is always important, and it's nerve wracking, and it's, you know, I'm nervous sometimes, and it's like, okay, I got one chance to get it right
For the money, baby. Let's
and
go.
you know,
I'm not gonna lie. I'm more sitting here right now in awe that we're interviewing Vlad because of what you're saying right now.
He's real humble right now, by the way.
No, because of the way he's saying this. Like I'm in there. I'm like, damn, we're in the middle of the story right now, and we're listening to how he really breaks it down. That is something that I'm just gonna go ahead and say it right now. We're not gonna be that good as he is at that because it's a different lane for sure. We have the conversations with individuals, and we more or less do wing it. You have an entire layout of how it works. That's incredible because you could see it through the interview when you're watching the interview. You just don't know that this person is really there putting in this whole layout there.
Yeah.
Like this is exactly how it's gonna.
well, think of it as like a song, right? Think about it as like a rap song. Are you gonna have one hot bar in, you know, every verse, or does every bar have to be on point for it to be a great song? If you're just wasting time and then, oh, something hot, then wasting time and then wasting time. Okay, here's another hot line and waste. It's not going to be a hot song. It's going to be a filler.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. You know,
it'll
like
show
a
over time.
great movie, every scene, like you watch a Scarface, there's so many memorable parts.
Yeah.
It's not just one scene that you remember and you forget everything else. Like
Nothing
there's
wasted.
so many quotables and so many parts. Every scene is meticulously, you know, like the Coen brothers are so good at this. You know, one of my favorite producers, directors. Like you watch like movies like Hudsucker Proxy. It's like every scene is so intricately crafted, and they spend so much time on every single part to create this great work of art. That's how you should approach it, as opposed to, yeah, there's a little bit of hot shit here, and everything else is just you fast forward it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the effort definitely shows. Like, has anybody ever approached you, or you ever thought about like doing a specific documentary on somebody that you?
I've done documentaries. You know, I did my first documentary was Ghost Ride the Whip. I did one of the episodes of American Gangster on Mac Dre, and that at the time, at least, that business wasn't something that I really was really into. It was a lot of work. Like a documentary is a lot.
Do you mean for him to execute the documentary, for a documentary of and or on him?
Well, like to execute, like
To
for
execute,
instance,
yeah. I understood what you said.
because I was thinking about like the Fred Williamson interview and like
Yeah.
the way that was articulated, put together.
Right.
I feel like I knew his whole life
was a-
story.
it was a movie,
Yeah,
right,
and
yeah.
it was in his own words, and like you're articulating,
Yeah.
you did it for posterity, and you could
Yeah.
tell it's that way.
Right. I did John Witherspoon's last interview. His only life story piece. This is one of my heroes. This is probably one of y'all heroes.
Yeah, of
Right?
course.
John Witherspoon, Ops from Friday.
Coordinate.
Yeah.
Coordinate. I was
Met him a
top of the
couple
mushroom
times.
belt.
Yeah.
You find out all that was ad lib,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
You found out that the mushroom belt and the jacket was something he picked out of the wardrobe room.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy just had him, and it's like I love Boomerang. That was one of my favorite
Yeah,
all-time
legend.
Eddie Murphy movies.
I worked at I say this probably every other episode. I worked at the improv comedy club for 10 plus years. So, I had
okay.
the pleasure of meeting a lot of these guys, John
Yeah.
Witherspoon being one of them. And
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that you meet and you're like, oh, you're really like this.
You really like this.
You're not
yeah.
not like I always refer to like Pauly Shore. Pauly Shore did a movie and he got stuck being that guy.
Yeah.
You know, so every time they see him, they want him to be that guy. John Witherspoon is who he is.
He's that guy.
He really dresses
Yeah.
like that. He really.
Yeah, he's that guy. And yeah, it's but to answer your question, it's a lot of work, and it ended up being not a lot of money, and I've never seen a royalty check to this day. And it was like that was the motivation to actually put my effort into YouTube, because it's like I just don't like this business model. of putting together. You know what? It did turn out to be some dope art, but you know, you're going through so many of these crooked distribution companies. You know, if you watch, you remember the Fred Williamson interview. He said he who counts the money first counts the most money. A lot of times they don't tell you how much they count, and you just, all right, here's your advance.
Be grateful.
Be grateful. What's your next project? And it's like, well, fuck this next project. I'm gonna own my own shit. I'm gonna put my own shit out, and YouTube is more transparent and allows you to keep ownership. And it just seemed like a much better business model to me. So that's why, I mean, a company did approach me to do a documentary recently that I would be like a producer or a part owner in. You know, I'm not going to say what it is because it's not, you know, it's not there. But that's the whole thing. Like I'll do something with maybe a bigger production company, but I have to be a part owner. I cannot be like that dude that they pay. That, you know, it's like at this point, like we don't license hardly anything.
Right.
I turned down a lot of documentary offers just because I just
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary. I don't care. The publicity is whatever. You know.
So unless it's the Coen brothers, come correct. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please come correct.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, like if the Hughes brothers asked me, be like, yo, no, I'm fans of these dudes. I just interviewed them. It's just like, yo, like Dear Mama, like I remember just as someone who does documentaries or does documentary type content, I remember hitting up Alan Hughes, and I'm like, this is so dope. Like the way you put this thing together is just amazing. How you use the lyrics with the sparse beats and you know the flashbacks to tell the story a certain type of way. It was like just brilliant. You know, these guys are dope, but they haven't been compensated for how dope they are because they've always had to go through these bigger companies, and by the time it trickles down to them, you know, these dudes should be, you know, worth hundreds of millions of dollars and should be rich as fuck, and I just don't think that's the case, unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? Like they haven't, they're not, you know, because they have to work through these bigger systems because what they're creating involves a lot more money and so forth. So everyone has to choose their own way in what they do.
Yeah. For just a few stories.